Hello and welcome to Unwinding Minds, where today we are going to discuss some of the facts and the myths surrounding ADHD. This is part one of a two-part series. I initially put it into one video, but that was way too long, so I've broken it down. Without further ado, let's review some of these myths to help us sort fact from fiction. Okay, so myth number one is ADHD is a minor condition and people are over-exaggerating when they say how bad their symptoms are. Well, ADHD varies in its impact for different people. So some people adapt and find coping strategies that can make it appear as if it isn't having a strong effect on their daily life. That's notably different from not having any impact. Controlled chaos is still chaos, and it takes energy to maintain. Additionally, it's important to remember that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition. It develops during childhood, and a neurodevelopmental condition is not the same as a mental illness, where there is a distinctive state of someone having periods of change in their state of mind, and have a normal baseline of wellness to compare things to. ADHD is always with you. There is no baseline normal state to compare it to because it's a part of you. Something else I think is really important here to address is that with access to the internet, there's more room for sharing information, and so many people are recognizing ADHD in themselves more easily. That's the nature of sharing information and of learning. There is also more room for people to worry that they may have health conditions that they are yet to have been diagnosed with. But with how challenging it is to get diagnosis, sometimes self-diagnosis is all there is for the time being. ADHD affects every single area of your life, and whilst I did say that the impact varies for different people, it's in every area of your life. Let's move on to myth number two. ADHD is mostly in boys or you always grow out of it. I think this misconception isn't really the fault of the people who believe this to be true. The reason that this has been perpetuated is because the bulk of the earlier research done on this was done on children, with a focus on boys in particular. This could be down to the tendency of boys to present with more hyperactive external traits of ADHD, where girls might have internal hyperactivity, or they may present with a more inattentive style or combined style of ADHD. Children also have less of a tendency to mask their symptoms because they haven't learned those strategies of masking yet. What's curious is that the bulk of people who are receiving diagnosis now are adults. In fact, according to University College London, who researched this using meta-analysis data of over 7.6 million people over the last 2 decades, the relative increase in diagnosis is largest with adults. In fact, the growth in diagnosis has grown almost 20-fold in one group in particular, with almost a 50-fold increase in prescriptions to men aged 18 to 29 years. It's poignant to recognize that there may still be a high degree of medical bias in professionals and in researchers towards men and males. So there could also be a high number of females not being diagnosed with ADHD where they should be. I've worked with many women who have all the typical signs of the more inattentive style of ADHD. And when listening to their experiences with the diagnosis process, it's clear that most of them felt very unheard and that they fought quite hard to even be referred on for diagnosis. I noticed as well that this is in my private practice, that the discrimination there correlated a lot with age. Older women seeking diagnosis have to fight extremely hard due to increased discrimination. The thinking is often, well, you've made it this far, so maybe it's not actually that bad for you, which Yikes. It's rife in the medical community, unfortunately, and it's something that we need to work on. So the truth is, no, ADHD isn't mostly in boys, and you do not always grow out of it. In some children, there is the ability to grow past some of the symptoms or learn to manage them differently. But it's difficult to say how much of this is affected by medical bias and the level of research that has gone into mostly predominantly men and boys. This brings us quite nicely onto myth number 3. ADHD is overdiagnosed. ADHD UK has researched this and estimates that anywhere between 80 to 85% of cases may be undiagnosed. The really interesting question is, where does this disparity come from? The figures reflect that there is, if anything, a problem around lack of diagnosis of ADHD. But a lot of discourse online and in real life is that actually there are a lot of younger people who are talking about ADHD and probably don't have it. I think there's a few reasons for this. My opinion is that, number one, the problems of the young are easily dismissed as pathetic or more often fake. Young people are frequently the targets of online snipes about this. I mean, crikey, how many headlines have you seen over the last decade slating millennials for all the world's ills? It's happening to Gen Z and Gen Alpha as well now, and the dismissal of the concerns of the young is nothing new. Number two, what would it mean about us as a society if it were true? What would it mean if a large number of the population have an undiagnosed and untreated neurodevelopmental condition? I think that this belief that ADHD is overdiagnosed perhaps comes from a certain degree of discomfort around disability. When I hear this argument made in real life, it's usually made with a great deal of passion and sometimes a touch of anger. It's charged with feeling. When I see that, it makes me very curious. What if the reality is that it's uncomfortable for that individual to think about being amongst disabled people? What if there's a discomfort with the idea as well that a huge number of people that are struggling and not getting medication or diagnosis or support, it shines a mirror back on us, what we are or aren't doing to help each other, which can be painful if the truth is that we aren't doing enough yet. As I mentioned earlier, there's more access to information now with the internet, which is likely to be part of the reason more adults are choosing to go through the lengthy and often very stressful process of seeking diagnosis. Let's move on to myth number 4. Medication is a form of control and will be bad for me. Listen, ADHD medication and going onto it is a personal choice. Not everybody wants to go down that pathway, and I respect that. It's good to look at treating mental and physical well-being through lifestyle adjustments, and we all know that medication can come with side effects that might render the effectiveness of the medication moot. It's also really important to understand how ADHD medications affect the body. That way, you know what to expect, what they might or might not do to you, largely speaking. ADHD medications, like methylphenidates, can help to address the neurotransmitter imbalances which are found in GABA or dopamine receptors. And depending on the medication that's used, it can restore someone closer to the way a more neurotypical brain functions. When we use words like control in relation to medication, it's great to think about how they're being applied. Control of symptoms that are decreasing your quality of life is different than medications are a form of controlling me so that I'm more easy for neurotypical people to interact with. And the former is obviously the goal. Medication is a personal choice, and at the end of the day, taking any medication to make other people happy is usually not advisable as a primary motivation. Instead, it's better to look at your symptoms and really think about whether it's going to improve your quality of life. And the final myth that we're going to be covering today is number 5. Poor parenting and strict teachers are the cause of ADHD. Categorically, this is not accurate. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition caused by a huge plethora of factors like DNA, environment, and structural brain differences. ADHD is statistically more likely in children with parents who have neurodiversity themselves. As many as 1/3 of all fathers have ADHD will produce a child with ADHD. Much more research is required to establish links between environmental factors and ADHD. Furthering the confusion, I think, is that childhood trauma can present with very ADHD-like symptoms, leading to the incorrect courses of treatment or even potentially misdiagnosis. It's not black and white. Many children who have had poor parenting grow up to have absolutely no signs of ADHD. But we do know that brains are neuroplastic, so they change depending on additional external stresses, aka your environment. I have had many clients before who have had some of the most traumatic childhoods you can imagine, and they don't display any signs of ADHD. I appreciate that my personal experience isn't backed by research, but that's kind of my point. There really isn't enough research available to definitively identify causes of ADHD being tied to bad parenting or nasty teachers. Lots of research suggests that ADHD is present at birth, though it's usually only recognized when the child starts to go to school. So there we have it. We've reached the end of part 1 of this 2-part series on ADHD myths and facts. There will be links to research to support some of these arguments in the description, but I'm very curious to hear what myths have you heard that you would like us to address on this channel. Let us know in the comments section below. Were you surprised by any of these? Hopefully you can join us for part 2. Please like, comment and subscribe to get more videos like this one and turn on the notifications. We'll see you next time. Take care.